Good evening. World, in the news over the past, was it yesterday or the day before? I don't know. It's kind of strange that I can't remember whether it was yesterday or the day before. But there was a Blue Origin flight that launched with 6 women on it. It was purely women on this flight. The first all-female crew of a space flight. And there seems to be a lot of debate and interest. There's some who are looking at it and saying it's the first all-female crew. There are others who are looking at it like they were just along for the ride. But it kind of creates an interesting little quandary here. The question is, well, situation. Blue Origin is completely automated. It takes off, it launches up, they hit an apogee of above 62 miles, which puts it above the Kármán line, and then it just descends, comes back down, completely automated. They do nothing more than, for example, somebody who's strapped in to a roller coaster, somebody who's strapped onto a commercial airline. They're along for the ride. There are no control mechanisms inside that capsule. Nothing they could do. Everything is automated or from the ground. And the question is asked, are they astronauts? Or should there be a different term for them? Because, you know, when we look back at our past at these astronauts that we have seen, these guys go through, and gals, go through this rigorous selection process. They have to have these talents, they have to have these skills, and once they're selected, now they go through training processes where they go from astronaut candidates until astronauts, and they have their silver wings until they actually make their trip into space, in which case they become gold-winged astronauts. And it is an honor. It is this thing where they've got it. But then came, it was 20 years ago, space tourism started. A guy by the name of Tito. Was it Dennis Tito? Dennis Tito paid for a seat above a Soyuz to go up to the ISS. I think it was $20 million or something like that. He had the money, he did it. And thus became a space tourist. Prior to that, even on the space shuttle, they had payload specialists. Payload specialists were not professional astronauts. These were people who were sort of along for the ride. Among the most notable of them was Senator Jake Garn, who really, truly was, actually, as far as a payload specialist, this guy made a real impact and has a history that NASA has not been the same since he took that flight. And the reason for it is because they have actually created something called the Garn unit, where 1 Garn is the maximum level of space sickness any human being could ever possibly hope to get. As said, one of the people associated, most people with a case of space sickness might end up with 0.1 Garn. Jake Garn's case of space sickness was so incredibly and vastly greater than everybody else. Okay, I digress. I'm sorry, I digress. But they had payload specialists. Now, there are some of them, all right. The person who has the most space launches within the briefest period of time is actually a payload specialist by the name of Charlie Walker, who was not a professional astronaut, but he had 3 launches on the space shuttle in the span of, I think it was like 18 months. Okay? That cat was accepted. And you would have scientists, you would have, I mean, if you want to take a look at interesting stuff, look up a guy named Taylor Wang, okay? A guy who actually, I really, really want to talk to the flight surgeon on that flight. Her name? Dr. Santy. But I want to talk to her about that, but I'm sure that if I asked her questions about it, she would say, obviously, I can't answer it. Maybe just to get the no, make her say no. But we have these astronauts, and since Tito, there have been a few who have paid for their way up into space. A former astronaut by the name of Clayton Anderson came up with a term for them, calls them cashtronauts, because they got the money to pay for the ride, they're going to go ahead and do this. And so now we have these ventures. Suborbital, there was Virgin Galactic, people could get rides. That didn't go above 62 miles, though. Virgin Galactic was only capable of going maybe 55 miles high, which is enough for the United States, but it's not the international rules for what constitutes space. I don't know. It's actually a plane. I think if I were going to ride something, I would probably want to ride that one, just because it seems to be a bit more dynamic with it. There are pilots associated with it. And with SpaceX, we've had these paid trips that we've had and have done some interesting things. We just had one of them that went into polar orbit for the first time with non-professional astronauts who paid for it. Prior to that, Jared Isaacman, who is now, been named as the NASA administrator. Jared Isaacman, I think, has taken 2 flights. Among them was a spacewalk and had attained the highest altitude as far as what the farthest apogee among anybody. Question is, are these women or any of these people that go on these flights astronauts? Is William Shatner an astronaut? Is Katy Perry an astronaut? Look, as much as it might be time to go ahead and change that definition a little bit, as far as what is an astronaut, is there a commercial astronaut? I actually like Anderson's term, castronaut. As much as I can look at those and say, hey, maybe we should do things a little bit differently. Another shuttle era astronaut, Mike Mullane, I think actually put it best. He looks at it and says it's a discredit to have that Kármán line to make somebody an astronaut. He said, once those hold down bolts blow, you're an astronaut. Despite anything that you can look at. Despite anybody who says, oh, they're just along for the ride. Yeah, well, you know what? So is Krista McAuliffe. She was just along for the ride. So is Gregory Jarvis. In a sense, so is Ilan Ramon. Okay? These are people who were payload specialists. They were just along for the ride. And whether we like it or not, this business is dangerous. If something goes wrong on that, we have some dead people. It's going to be some bad press, but I look at it and I think those women, as much as it's a thrill ride, it is a hell of a thrill ride. And much like taking a submersible down to take a look at the Titanic, chances are everything is going to be okay. But if something goes poorly, if something goes bad, that's a bad spot. And those women, they went to space, they had the joy of going to space. Hey, you're on board a rocket. You are on board you're on board something that can blow up. You're heading into a spot where after the first 60 seconds that you lift off from that ground, you are in a place that is incompatible with human life. But I'd do it. I'd do it in a heartbeat. But, it takes the guts to be able to do something like that. It takes this courage that there are plenty of people out there that wouldn't have it. Okay? Me, I used to skydive. It scared the hell out of me every time. Famous story about Story Musgrave, another shuttle astronaut. I was getting ready for a mission, and everybody's joking, everybody's, moving around, everybody's talking around and joking and bantering with each other, and then finally one of them says to Musgrave, "Hey, Story, why are you so quiet?" And Story responds, "Because I'm scared to death." Story Musgrave, I think at that point, was setting the record for the most launches into space out of any human in history. I think Jerry Ross beat him. Maybe Mike LA beat him. Or Chiang-Diaz. I think Chiang-Diaz has it now, the most launches. But at that time, this is Story Musgrave, who was saying he was so quiet before this launch because he was scared to death. And he had done it more than any human in history. These women astronauts? Yeah, I would say that they're astronauts. The only thing you got to do to be an astronaut, I think in America, is get above 50 miles. But they're international. They're astronauts. Those hold down bolts blue. They put themselves on board something that could blow up at any minute. And they were absolutely without control of anything that happened. They were just along for the ride. And to quote Jaeger in The Right Stuff, spam in a can. If you want to create another category of astronaut, go ahead and go for it. But for me, as far as the time being goes, pin those wings on them. Prove me wrong.